Ethan Foster stared into the mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time that morning. The reflection looking back at him was familiar, yet strange. A man caught between the life he'd built and the one he was unraveling. He was good at putting on a facade, at smiling and pretending everything was fine. But inside, turmoil brewed like an untamed storm. Across the house, his wife Sarah moved about in silence. She had once been his everything, a vibrant spirit with laughter that lit up his world. But the months of lies had dimmed her shine, leaving only the ghost of the woman he'd loved. He could feel it, the tension simmering between them like an unspoken curse. "Ethan, breakfast is ready," Sarah called, her voice edged with a formality that sent a pang of guilt through him. He plastered on a smile and headed to the dining room where the table was set neatly, the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with buttered toast hanging in the air. "Morning," he said, sliding into his seat. "Morning," she replied, her eyes flickering to him briefly before returning to her coffee. Ethan picked at his food, the rhythm of the morning routine suffocating him. They seemed like a couple trapped in amber, a snapshot of what they used to be, but so different from the reality that existed now. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed against the table, jolting him from his thoughts. It was a message from Lisa, the woman he had been seeing for the past year, their affair a forbidden thrill that he convinced himself was harmless. He glanced at Sarah, her back turned as she poured more coffee. "Can't wait to see you tonight." His heart raced, a mix of excitement and dread coursing through him. He had grown used to hiding this part of his life, convinced that no repercussions would emerge. But as he glanced back at Sarah, he felt the fleeting sensation of guilt wash over him again. "Ethan?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie, drawing his attention. "Yeah?" he replied, forcing himself to focus. "Are you all right? You seem distant." "Just tired," he replied too quickly, a thin lie that felt like a tightening noose. "Okay," she replied, a hint of disappointment coloring her voice. "We need to talk about Mark's school project. Have you thought about how we're going to help him?" As the conversation turned to mundane details, Ethan found himself slipping back into the mental cocoon he had spun. He let Sarah's words wash over him as his mind wandered to the evening ahead with Lisa. The thrill of sneaking around, the intoxicating feeling of desire. The thrill of that double life was an addiction, one that dulled every ounce of love he once felt for Sarah. With another full day ahead at work, Ethan pushed thoughts of Sarah and the looming confrontation aside, focusing instead on the thrill of what lay ahead. Another rendezvous with Lisa, where they'd escape their realities for just a few stolen hours. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan's infidelity continued, an imperceptible tick-tock in the back of his mind. He maintained a carefully constructed balance, pretending to be the devoted husband and father while sneaking away to meet Lisa, each meeting feeding his hunger for illicit pleasure. Meanwhile, Sarah's demeanor had shifted. The tension became palpable. Her once bright eyes were often clouded with sadness and suspicion, but Ethan refused to acknowledge what was happening. Instead, he focused on the high he'd found with Lisa, convincing himself he deserved it. But Sarah had an innate ability to sense when something was off. No longer the oblivious partner in their narrative, she began to piece together the puzzle that her husband's late nights and texts were not the innocent explanations he offered. Her intuition blared alarms from deep within. One evening, while moving about the kitchen, she stumbled across a receipt from a local hotel. It was dated for Yao, The same weekend, Ethan had claimed a business trip. Feeling her heart drop, Sarah confronted him. "Ethan, why were you at the Riverside Hotel?" she asked, voice steady despite the way her heart raced. "What?" "I wasn't there," he replied, a hint of panic threading through his voice. "The receipt says otherwise," she pressed, holding it out for him to see. "Maybe it's a mistake." "I don't know," he deflected, quickly swiping it from her hand and tossing it into the trash. "I see you're still good at lying," she whispered, her voice cracking with the weight of disappointment. Ethan turned away from her, guilt wrapping around him like a tight embrace. "It's not what you think," he muttered, backing away from the confrontation. Days passed, each one a battle between them. Sarah was determined to understand the truth behind the lies, while Ethan buried himself deeper into the realm of deception, drinking in the daytime with stress and guilt. As tension grew, so did something darker within Sarah. She found herself spiraling deep into realms she never thought she would enter, considering the unthinkable, ruminating over revenge. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold determination, a whispered promise to confront the betrayal that seemed to have tarnished every moment of their lives. She started researching poisons subtly, spending hours online delving into medical journals, always careful to mask her searches. To her surprise, she discovered a world of possibilities, each one feeding her need for retribution. With each bottle she eyed, a sense of calm washed over her, a resolve to act. The weeks moved slowly, each day marked by Ethan's continued infidelity and Sarah's growing resolve. They lived under the same roof, yet the space between them felt like an abyss. She'd listen to his calls and watch his late-night texts, each one a dagger to her heart, each one convincing her further that he would never truly care. It was on, a gray afternoon as she stirred a pot on the stove, cooking dinner for Mark, that she spotted an article mentioning a plant known for its toxic properties, aconitum, commonly called wolfsbane. The mere thought of it sent shivers down her spine. The next day, she knew what she had to do. She found a local florist with a greenhouse that carried exotic plants. Browsing through the display, her heart raced. When she spotted wolfsbane, its dark flowers seemed to mock her. She purchased the plant under the guise of a houseplant, hugging it close in the car. That night, she prepared a meal for Ethan with extraordinary care. She took her time, allowing the day's tension to dissolve with each movement. The slicing of vegetables, the simmering of saucy aromas dancing through the air. As she finished cooking, she quietly prepared a special dose. Crushing some of the wolfsbane petals, she carefully dissolved it in his portion of sauce before pouring it over the chicken. As she plated their dinners, she felt a surge of satisfaction, her heart thrumming with the thrill of what she was about to do. "Dinner's ready," she called, forcing a smile as Ethan walked in. "Smells amazing," he remarked, taking a seat without looking in her eyes. As they settled into their meal, Ethan chatted casually about a project at work, while Sarah kept her gaze steady, the lump in her throat reminding her of the weighty decision she just made. "Really? That sounds interesting," she said, even though her thoughts were miles away, shrouded in the act of betrayal she was now committing. With every bite, she watched him closely. The anticipation clawed at her, fear mingling with excitement. What if he noticed? What if it didn't work? But as he swallowed the food, laughter spilled through the air, brief, blissful moments, until the inevitable moment arrived. Ethan's face paled and a wave of panic washed over her. "Are you okay?" she asked, pretending concern. He waved a hand dismissively. "I think I just ate too quickly," he replied, drinking water from his glass. Sarah scolded herself inwardly, every ounce of betrayal coursing through her veins, retreating into the shadows of the past. Would this truly bring her peace? The next days faded into a monotony of routine, with Ethan showing signs of persistent nausea and fatigue. His mood shifted, offering brief glimpses of anger and confusion, and Sarah relished in the fact that she had gained control. Each night brought her closer to strength. As Ethan's health continued to deteriorate, he became increasingly isolated and moody. The vibrancy that had once defined their home was replaced with silence, the walls themselves witnessing the unraveling of their lives. Sarah feigned concern, playing the devoted wife role. "Babe, maybe we should visit the doctor," she urged one evening, concern etched across her face. "I'm fine, just stressed," he snapped, his voice sharp. "I have a lot on my plate." But Sarah could see through his bravado. One night, as they lay in bed, he turned to her, the shadows of doubt and betrayal clouding his expression. "Just tell me the truth, Sarah. Are you hiding something from me?" Her heart raced. "No, I would never," she replied, forcing sincerity into her voice. Something in his gaze shifted, an unspoken accusation lingering between them. But he turned away, staring into the darkness. Sarah felt her breath hitch. Every day she spent harming him pushed them deeper into a psychological game, where guilt and anger waged war inside her. "I'm going to the doctor in the morning," he announced suddenly, breaking the silence. "I need to figure out what's wrong." Fear gripped Sarah. No more slipping through the cracks. The poison was starting to take its toll, driving them apart in ways she hadn't anticipated. At the doctor's office, Ethan sat across from the physician as they both discussed his symptoms: persistent nausea, fatigue, and mental fog. She watched silently from the doorway, holding her breath, hoping this would not reveal her secrets. Too soon. Detective Maria Torres, who had entered the office, stopped short. "Ethan Foster?" she called, her tone filled with authority. "Yes?" Ethan replied, confused. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" she urged, leading him to the side. As fear washed over her, Sarah crept closer, eavesdropping. "Mr. Foster, we've had complaints about your absence. People are worried." "Your wife is too," Torres began. "Worried? Why should she be?" "I'm just sick," he replied, exasperated. "We need to look into what's happening. You've lost weight, and this isn't normal." As they continued to speak, Sarah felt a chill. If they uncovered her secret, everything would collapse. Her plans, her desires for revenge, they'd melt away under scrutiny. That evening, Ethan returned home, exhaustion etched across his features. "I just want things to go back to normal," he muttered as he sat heavily on the couch. Sarah moved closer, feigning empathy. "What did the doctor say?" "They think I'm just stressed, but this isn't just stress," he admitted, angst pooling in his voice. A wild idea began to unfold in Sarah's mind. If she couldn't kill him outright through poisoning, perhaps she would drive him to the edge, to a confrontation that could unravel his entire world, a chance to expose him and show him just how far he had pushed her. Days turned into a blur of deceit, Ethan's health spiraling out of control. He grew paranoid at work, uncertain of himself, questioning every interaction, every glance. Meanwhile, Sarah plotted her final move with unwavering determination. One night after another, endless argument linked to his growing paranoia, Sarah hatched her plan. She confronted him with a ruse. She had always kept a close eye on the kitchen, making sure nothing was suspicious. "Ethan, I found something," she said, her voice echoing with false concern as she pulled an envelope from her bag. "What is it?" he snapped. Any semblance of calm shattered. "It's this," she said. "A report I found on your health." "Just drop it, Sarah," he shouted, recoiling, his frustration spilling over. But she pressed forward. "You need to see this," she insisted, revealing a fabricated document that hinted at his emotional instability from the stress of cheating and lying. "You need to get help." "Help? For what? You're the one driving me mad." He stood, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair in agitation. But Sarah's heart raced with exhilaration. She had finally turned the game back in her favor. "You're letting your guilt consume you, and it will ruin our marriage if you don't get control of it," she pressed. "Stop trying to manipulate me. I'm not. I want us to be happy. Again, for Mark's sake. We can work through this." Weeks passed in a haze of arguments and simmering rage. One night, when she sensed he was especially vulnerable, Sarah made her final move. While he slept fitfully on the couch, she delicately slipped into the kitchen, preparing another meal with wolfsbane. She dissolved a potent dose into the sauce, before plating it and setting it down in front of him. When he awoke groggy, she feigned innocence. "Dinner's ready. You must be starving." With every bite Ethan took, Sarah felt a surge of anticipation wash over her. Could this truly be the moment when she finally regained control? Only this time, he began to choke, panic filling his eyes. "What the hell, Sarah?" "Ethan! What's the matter?" she gasped, filled with a sudden rush of fear as his eyes widened in realization. "What did you put in this?" He spat, retreating from the table, pleading with her as he stumbled, and fell onto the floor. "Ethan, please, just breathe." He gasped for air, confusion and betrayal mixed with fury. You poisoned me." "Let's not pretend we're not past that point," she said, tears streaming down her face. But her heart raced with the thrill of what was unfolding. This is the moment, she thought. "You've destroyed everything. I never wanted this," he choked out, the struggle evident in his voice. "Neither did I, Ethan, until you broke me." Ethan's fury was replaced with a look of desperation. "You think this will fix anything? You're killing me." Driven to fear, he collapsed, clutching his chest as he writhed on the floor, gasping. The moments stretched like an eternity. Sarah's breath catching in her throat as she watched Ethan grapple with the culmination of their life. Their love twisted into destruction. As the sirens blared in the distance, a part of her quelled the guilt that threatened to drown her. Revenge felt rewarding and liberating all at once. The chaos of their lives would finally reach a resolution, she thought. And with that final flicker of hope, the world spun out of control, blurring before her eyes as she whispered the words he had never heard. "I loved you, Ethan, but you destroyed me." Months later, as the legal battles unfolded and an investigation initiated, the remnants of their life whispered through the halls. Shadows echoing memories of laughter now turned to silence. Detective Maria Torres watched the news unfold, the case a haunting reminder of the inner demons that lurk beneath the human psyche. Sarah sat at home, her heart heavy with regret, and a sense of vindication, wondering how far she would go again when faced with betrayal. But she had clawed her way to freedom now, having stepped into the shadows of revenge, a strange serenity settling in her heart. As she gazed out the window at the falling rain, Sarah Foster felt a bittersweet liberation roll over her. The echoes of a love lost whispered in the void. Maybe this was how it had to be. An end shrouded in darkness yet. Carrying the torch of her own strength, her heart felt lighter, and somewhere deep down inside, she knew she would rise again.